You made this decision long ago. The Empire cannot win. You're coming home to yourself.
Hello and welcome back to another We Ourselves video. Today I want to talk about the idea of homework once again, but not from the angle that I did before. I want to talk about this idea of no homework from a personal angle as an author and how we can repeat this false notion even when it contradicts our own self-interest. Now, I know I've talked about this idea of Kevin Feige's narrative that he doesn't want people to have to do homework when it comes to the MCU. The reason I'm revisiting this topic is because I recently attended the DragonCon Science Fiction Convention in Atlanta over the Labor Day weekend, and I came across a fellow author at his table in the exhibitors hall. Now, I've talked to several authors over the weekend, including the fantastic Kevin J. Anderson. But this one stood out to me the most because of where our conversation went. First of all, he explained that his novels aren't necessarily a series per se, because each one of his novels is a kind of standalone book. And that interested me because I also have an adult sci-fi series that I'm working on where a reader can come to my novels out of order and don't necessarily have to read all of them. But it's good if the reader does read all the novels because each story dives into a different aspect of the world I created. And of course, as writers, that's exactly what we want readers to do. We want readers to take the dive. We want them to go on the journey. We want them to buy more than just one book and then walk away, okay? We want them to want more and buy more. Now, with this in mind, I asked the author how the readers responded to his connected yet standalone novels. And he said, well, they like it. They like the Easter eggs. They like one character appearing in another novel. They like learning more about the world. But then he mentioned Marvel. And he said the reason he was doing his novels this way was because he didn't want it to be like Marvel because he felt like he had to do homework. This is an illustration of why this idea is totally bogus for Kevin Feige and for the author with whom I talked. And nothing against the author. He was a great guy and we had a perfect conversation. And I actually bought his first book because I wanted to see how well he accomplished what he set out to do. But the reason that I claim this narrative is a hoax and bogus is because what this author did in the end with his individual standalone novels is exactly what the MCU did. There are standalone MCU movies that introduce you to different aspects and areas of the MCU, and by watching them, a person can expand their total understanding of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First of all, I want to stop and define what I mean by standalone MCU movies. For me, a standalone MCU movie is any MCU origin movie where you meet and follow a character or characters from where he, she, or they begin and follow them through their transformation and into their new role going forward. The story is complete, self-contained, and doesn't require you to watch the post or end credit scenes to understand what has happened. And the last thing that I want to say about these standalone or self-contained movies is they also expand on some aspect or corner of the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. For example, you can watch the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie and you're introduced to the members of the team, and through them, you're introduced to the cosmic side of the MCU. You can watch the first Thor movie, and you're introduced to Thor, to Loki, to his father, to Asgard, and you're also introduced to the mythological side of the MCU. You can watch the first Iron Man movie, and you're introduced to Tony Stark and his Stark tech that's gonna become an important factor for the MCU. And you can watch the first Hulk movie and you're introduced to Bruce Banner. You see the research and the experimentation that's gonna come into play later on. So just like this author that I met with his novels, the MCU did the same thing. At the end of the day, this author was more like Marvel than he wanted to admit. The more of his books the readers bought, the more they were rewarded with the Easter eggs and cameos. That's just like Marvel in the bad old days of homework. So I just wanted to pause and say that before I went on, because all of this is going to go into my 3 reasons why Kevin Feige and Bob Iger's no homework narrative is a hoax. My number one reason for why this argument is bogus or a hoax is the Thunderbolts movie. The first and the best, according to Bob Iger, depended on past history of the characters for the audience to fully understand the characters, where they were coming from, their motivation, and have greater appreciation for what they were watching. Yes, you can watch the movie as a standalone self-contained movie, but as I explained in a previous video, I watched first-time reactors watch the Thunderbolts, and they had a lot of questions about why different characters were acting and behaving in certain ways. And they had those questions because they had not done the homework. They had not watched the previous Disney Plus shows or movies. And because of that, they went away with a lot of questions despite being able to follow the movie.
Was he in the Winter Soldier?
Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Where's this from?
Yeah, that's what I said. You gotta watch Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Okay.
It's a lot.
But therein lies the problem. If you didn't want people to have to do homework, then why create a movie where all the characters came from somewhere else in your MCU? Avengers Doomsday is going to be one of the most expensive movies that Marvel has ever made. And we have a multitude of characters of whom the audience will need some past knowledge to understand what the hell is going on. Now, you can argue that this is made for the longtime fans, but then that goes against Kevin Feige's narrative of not requiring new fans to do homework. And I just have to say this. Please notice that if they weren't concerned or if they did not want people or new fans to come to this movie with past knowledge of the previous MCU offerings, then why did they use the real actors' names on those chairs in the teaser instead of the fictional character names? In my opinion, if you use the fictional character names, then that allows people who never watched any of your MCU movies yet had a knowledge or familiarity with the fictional character, which is much more likely in my opinion, then they could approach this movie and be interested in what's going on. They could be comic book readers who didn't watch all of the Marvel movies because they didn't like how you changed the characters. They could be people that watched some of the animated shows, or they could be people that watched the original Fox X-Men movies. My point is, the fictional character names are probably more widely known than the real actors. But you put the real actors' names on the back of those chairs because you wanted people to focus on what these actors did in the past for the MCU. Come on, do we honestly think that they want people to see Robert Downey Jr. sitting in that chair and think, hey, that's the guy from Oppenheimer, or that's Dr. Dolittle, or that's Sherlock Holmes, let's see what he does in this movie? They expect people to know Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man in the MCU and now he's Dr. Doom, and why that's a big deal. My third reason for why Kevin Feige's no homework narrative is a hoax is because they have standalone self-contained movies, yet they have no advertising campaign or marketing campaign to highlight this list of standalone self-contained MCU movies and shows that new fans can watch without having to do homework. I've already mentioned some of these standalone movies, but there are more movies where a newbie doesn't have to know anything about Infinity Stones, Thanos, or the Infinity Saga. So let's cover more of those right now. Captain America. I didn't mention that before, but Captain America, that's a standalone self-contained movie. You can watch that and you don't have to know anything about the other movies. The first Doctor Strange. You can watch the first Doctor Strange movie and you're introduced to the magical side of the MCU, different dimensions, sorcery, and the multiverse without ever having to worry about Infinity Stones. Marvel's most recent theatrical release, The Fantastic Four, introduces mutants into the MCU. You can watch that movie and you're introduced to Johnny Storm, Ben Grimm, Reed Richards, and Sue Storm in a different universe. So it too is a standalone self-contained movie. And don't let me forget the most popular of the standalone self-contained movies is Black Panther. There were plenty of people who saw Black Panther who never watched any of the previous Marvel movies before it and didn't watch any of them afterwards. but yet Black Panther was the most successful solo superhero movie ever in America cinema history. And all of these offerings can introduce members of the new fan club to different sides and aspects of the MCU and taken together provide them a more complete picture of the MCU. A new fan can watch these movies in any order they want, with the hope being that if they like the movies, maybe they will come back and at least watch the second or third movie in a series or other Marvel projects. In other words, taking the MCU journey, doing the deep dive, all the things that we want readers to do as authors when we write multiple books in a universe, and as we ourselves do as readers and watchers of science fiction and fantasy properties. Trust me, none of us think of this as homework because we love the genre. So why, as a company, is Kevin Feige, with Bob Iger's approval, going to change what has worked in the past to go after this mythical horde of untapped new fans when you already have a fan base that was large enough that you made billions of dollars in the most successful run of movies in America's cinema history? You had more than enough dedicated fans. You know, the fans who will buy all of your merch at the conventions, or who will buy your action figures, or who will buy the Marvel comics and read them, or who have a Disney Plus subscription, or who buys the physical media. Those fans. There were more than enough of us so that your company was highly profitable with the MCU. And, by the way, the envy of other studios, many who tried to copy you and failed. This is the question Kevin Feige and Bob Iger need to answer, because their own actions expose this no homework narrative as a hoax. And it is a hoax. It's a cover for their bad decisions to hire people who have no affinity for the material, no affinity for comic books, science fiction, or the fantasy genres. And we've seen the results. They have destroyed their once profitable and successful business model. Unfortunately, the longer they repeat this false narrative, the more it seeps into our own conversation and ideas. Don't accept the hoax. So anyway, that's what I wanted to come and talk about today. As always, you can tell me what you think in the comments, and also please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you the next time.
The sleeper has awakened!